two, one. So, welcome to the Inside Cafe, where it's just this place is really just a place for me to hang out with my dear colleagues and friends who are doers and creators who are just really doing cool things in the world. And I found that I was having really cool conversations with my friends, and I thought, more people should listen in on these. So that is how this podcast was born. And today, I have such a special treat. I have my dear friend, Nina Lockwood, and I prepared her bio. And Nina is a fool for love, a mystic at heart. And she's actually a secret badass because she's an advanced transformative coach. She's an author, she's a writer and speaker, and she's had a long her background is in psychotherapy, right, where you studied a lot of spiritual traditions and medicine, energy medicine and psychology. And today, you and me are going to talk about love and creativity, and how it impacts our lives, right? Especially in in business or relationships or day-to-day lives. I don't think we give it enough credit. And what I've loved about you is you're really good at talking about those things and pointing to the wisdom behind the things we call love and creativity.
All right, let's do it.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your really cool bio?
Oh, gee. No, that's good enough because really that's just a broad brushstroke, So I think the subjects are probably a lot more interesting than the bio.
I love that. So where do you reckon is a good place to start if we're gonna take a crack at love and creativity? Um, what comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is that most people are jittery around both those words.
Mm,
We were talking earlier, love is like, ooh, it's a soft thing and it makes you weak and your thinking goes all kaflooey if you're in love.
mm,
And the creativity, it's one of those things that everyone says, yes, we need it. We
mm,
have to do it. We live in a world where we need innovation, we need new ideas, we need new collaboration. But as soon as you get to the individual and say, are you creative? They'll say, oh, no, I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't sing. And they list all these things that they can't do. But they don't see
mm,
that it's a capacity that we all have, that we are creative by nature.
mm,
And we love by nature. It's just that that gets confined more and more the older we get because to be to be loving is, it's nice. It's nice in personal relationships and families, but business, unless you love what you do. And even that is
mm.
rather a curious question.
Actually, it's really good that you pointed that out because I think lately I've been doing a lot of work with businesses, and I've noticed that the words love and creativity aren't used as much. They aren't as talked about, or they aren't explored as much. It's more strategic and analytical. And I just noticed something too, especially working with like a lot of business owners. I noticed that it's almost like a graph, right? The smaller the business, the more they talk about things like love and creativity. The bigger the business, the more people get involved, the more structure, the more the higher the level of revenue, that those words tend to almost become extinct in those
Right.
organizations. And to what we were talking about before we started recording was like, that's where all the good shit is, like that's where all the juice is that help people grow and help businesses grow.
Yeah.
What are your
I,
thoughts on that? Like, what are we missing about love and creativity as such valuable innate resources that we might miss if we're trying to be really strategic or analytical in going about life or business?
well, to me, the most obvious thing is that when there's such an example on, emphasis on strategy and productivity and efficiency and revenue,
Mm,
like, how do we get there?
mm,
That may be the goal that a company is going towards. But if you don't love what you do, if you're not excited by whatever the process is that's going to get you to your goal, why are you doing it?
Mm. And
Right? That's like, what fuel are you operating on?
oh, I
High
love that.
test,
Yeah.
low test,
Right.
just the bare minimum.
I love the fuel example because I think that's such a powerful place to point to, because if you're actually this is a genuine question in a bit, but what I heard and what you said was, if you learn how to operate on love as fuel, and as cheesy as that sounds, I can see how powerful it is. Like, I, for myself, as a Taekwondo athlete, when I was training and going 3-4 hours and just kicking and sweating, and I was working on love because I love that sport. I love to be there. I love the people I was in. And um, I see how impactful that is now. And my question to you is, if you're not running on love as a fuel, what are you running on?
Could be any number of things, but it usually has to do with how am I doing? How do I look? How do people evaluate me? Am I doing a good enough job? There's a lot of comparison and competition and self-judgment that pushes a lot of us.
Well, that's a really good direction to look in. So just to reflect back is, if you're not running on love, most likely or most commonly, you're probably running on, excuse me, insecurity, right? Or doubt. And I see how now, how that's probably the most common fuel we're working. Like, what do you think is the difference between the two, of running on insecurity and running on love? Like what, how do you know? Like, how would I know what I'm running on?
Well, two things come to mind. One is the feeling behind it,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously when you're insecure, there's that nagging question like, am I doing enough? It's a very uncomfortable feeling. It's the not enough game.
Mm.
But when you're running on love, that's generative. That takes you to new directions. That helps you see more. And that's why I think love and creativity are very much aligned, because the more you see, the more you can connect. And that's exciting. That's wonderful to see new things and new possibilities. But if I'm being insecure about how I'm performing, then I'm just either trying to make the mark or exceed it, but I'm missing the joy of the process.
I just realized why, if you asked most, I think Taekwondo athletes, or I can only speak for my sport, is that most people, they like training more than they do competing. Because
Mm.
training is like, in training, there's no, you don't need to achieve any result or medals. You're just there because you just love being there. But in competition, there's gold medals and there's silver medals and there's, oh, I just realized I sound louder when I see this side. So anyways, there's, in competition, there's more results, and there's more anxiety and fear and doubt and insecurity. And I've just realized just now that the best players have learned how to run on love at any given situation, at any level of competition. And that's why they do so well,
For the love of the game.
for the love of the game.
Yeah.
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 And um, actually, to anybody watching like this and you really want to see this in action, I highly recommend watching The Last Dance on Netflix with the Chicago Bulls and Jordan. And in, like, if you watch this and go watch that, you'll see it. Because what I saw was, even though they're talking about stress and pressure and how Michael Jordan thrived in competition and putting pressure on people to make people better, he was running on love, like pure unleaded love, that really drove him to do amazing things. It might not have looked pretty. It might not have, um that's like I love to ask you too, like, because it doesn't always look pretty on the outside, right? Like, we think of love and we think of rosy tones and like pretty things, but I think Michael Jordan is a good example of that. Like, he did great work. It wasn't always pretty. And in Taekwondo and sweating and beating people up, it wasn't always pretty, but it was coming from, I really love this game.
Yeah. So love can be really fierce.
Mm,
And love can be, I think of a parent with a child that can be
mm,
very protective. It can
mm,
be demanding.
Mm,
but it's all in service of something.
mm,
And I think that's what people overlook. It's in service of something that we just can't, that we just want to be with. We just want to smush ourselves into it because it feels so good. So there's that feeling element that's really important. Like, what's driving me? You know, is it one of the things that I may have said to you, but it has been a really driving factor for me is
mm,
that I read this quote that purportedly written by Vincent van Gogh to his brother,
mm.
and he was Vincent van Gogh is in a tiny little garret as he's studying for the clergy. He has no money, and he's penniless and using a cheap pencil and yellow paper and by the light of a candle, and he's writing about what he sees and his experience. And suddenly he says he draws a sketch in his letter, and he says it's so beautiful, I must show you how it looks. And then he's drawn this little sketch on the paper. And when I read that, I thought, that's it. Because whether you're calling it beauty or something else, when something compels you, it takes you out of yourself and it puts you into an expanded state. And I think that is a big element of love. That's a big element of why we do what we do when we're not coming from insecurity.
Our mutual colleague, 𝗟ci𝗰𝗄𝘄𝘁, shout out to Christy. She said to me earlier this morning, love moves you, let it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's a beautiful dance if we're willing to stub our toes and make mistakes. And it's all part of that being in service. It's so beautiful. I have to show you. Like
Okay.
for Taekwondo, it's
Yeah.
so amazing. I have to show you. I have to be in it, be immersed in it. Love it.
So one of the ways that people can notice if which fuel they're running on is the feeling of it. And what I understand from what you're saying is running on love feels more expansive. It feels like the picture in my head is flowers blooming and growing in nature. And I guess running on insecurity feels more about me, about how am I
Yeah.
looking, and am I doing a good job? Am I going to do a good job? Does this person like me or not?
Yeah, that's perfect. It's you see the difference because when people are running on insecurity, they're afraid of the consequences. And
Mm,
when you're running on love, you don't care. You're just there. You don't
mm.
care if it's raining, snowing, the wind is blowing, you're in the middle of a thunderstorm. You're there because you love it.
Funny story about that. I don't know if it's gonna sound bad or good. I don't really remember the people I beat in Taekwondo. I remember everybody I lost to. And the I think my favorite match, I think, was like Thai National Olympics. I was fighting Phuket, and that guy was like the #1 seed, and he was good. And I got my ass kicked, but I had so much fun fighting him because I was like, oh man, for the love of the game, this is so good. I am losing badly, but this is so much fun. And I remember it vividly because I remember the feeling of just like, I'm getting my ass kicked, but this is fun. I'm like, because it got to a point where the score was like, I looked at my coach looked at me, and he's like, this, like, winning today is not going to happen here. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I can do whatever I want or try whatever I want. And it was so much fun.
Right. There's that element of being all in
Mm,
that I think doesn't happen when well, I know it doesn't happen when we're operating from insecurity,
right.
right?
So,
And
yeah. So are you saying that if people learn how to operate more from love rather than insecurity, they'd do better in business, they'd be more, um, I don't even know what the right words are, but the words that come to mind is to be more engaged in their work.
yeah,
And being more engaged in your work in any arena is generally going to produce better results.
I think you answered your own question.
That's why Nina's the best. So I'd love to podcast over. Thank you for coming, Nina. This was great. um, I wonder if we could look at creativity now. And I guess, like, what's a good bridge from love, from where we're talking about how running on love And what's a good bridge from that to creativity?
Well, let's see. What comes to mind for me is that love is, well, I was saying earlier, love is generative. And I think so is the process of creativity, because when you're open to something new, when you get curious, when you're willing to pursue something and say, I wonder what this could lead to, I wonder what else is here, it opens up your world. And that, I guess you could say there are degrees of love. And at a certain point, words are kind of useless, they're
Mm.
just pointers. But the more we start playing with things, the more we start experimenting, and the more we start asking that great question, what else? What else is possible? What else could this be? Then that generates excitement. And the excitement that comes along with curiosity leads to doing things differently. And that can be really fun.
Mm.
And that's, I think, what people don't really. We get back to that question of insecurity again, that they're afraid to make mistakes, or they're afraid that something is going to be a dead end. So
Or
there's
my
that
favorite one is there's only one right answer. And if you don't get that right answer, like you're screwed.
yeah, right, right. All these recovering perfectionists, that have been striving for the right answer the first time around, or the right move the first time around. What's so good about that?
Mm.
Really? And I remember years ago when I was taking some art classes, that I was doing techniques that I'd never done before.
Mm.
And I felt nauseous because I could feel that insecurity. But once I saw what it was like, okay, fine. That's not going to stop me, because the process of playing with things and seeing what combinations and seeing what could emerge was much more interesting than worrying about doing something that I'd never done before.
Mm. Speak more to that. Like, what do you think? Um, what are the, I guess, what are the benefits of being willing to go beyond what you know for someone running a business, or someone being in a team, or someone whose job is to innovate, or even just in a relationship, even like, what do you think is on offer for people to go beyond, to be willing to look beyond what they think they know?
Being more alive.
Oh,
I mean, who doesn't
yeah,
want that, right?
yeah.
It's an interesting situation in a business context,
Mm.
because then you're looking at the culture of the company, the values of the company, what is their overall mission,
Mhm.
and that can open up such a big world of possibility that the sky is the limit, because then it's not just generative for you, but it's generative for everybody that company touches, which is why so much of an increasing emphasis, I think, is happening with the conscious business movement
Mm.
and collaboration, and the recognition that collaboration is really necessary now, given the circumstances that we are facing.
What I heard in what you said is, well, there's a Thai phrase, and it's called, if in Thai it's like "นื้อฟ้ามีฟ้า," and it translates to above sky you will find more sky.
Uh-huh.
And what occurred to me in relating it to what you were talking to is how I think there's a premise, well, a general premise really, but if you relate to business, there's a premise that your capacity is largely based on your knowledge and on your skills. And what you and me are pointing to is your capacity can expand by where you're willing to look. If you're willing to look beyond what you know, your capacity will expand because you can see more,
Yeah.
and be willing to sit with a problem longer than anybody else is willing to, just to see something different. That opens up doors in any direction you're looking at. And I think why this conversation is so valuable is knowing where to look, right? Like knowing where to look in terms of opening up creativity. And I wonder if you could speak to that, in knowing where to look. because truthfully, I don't know where I was going with that, and hopefully you will know. You could take like your turn, Nina. Good luck.
That's such an interesting question because I think sometimes it's being willing to stop looking
Okay.
because we get so myopic. I have to find the answer. I've got to find the solution. This
Mm,
is got I've got 30 minutes to do it.
mm.
And there are probably a number of people listening to this call who are familiar with the concept of quitting. Just quit. Just stop for a while
Yeah, give it up.
and let your mind rest. Give it up, right? Because there's no room for any new ideas to come in.
So just so I can understand, it's um, one of the ways to invite more creativity is to give it up, right? To give up the myopic, like I gotta get it done. It needs to be done. And if you're willing to give it up, you'll get more space for new thinking to come in.
Right. That's an excellent way to look at it.
Mm,
And I think that we were talking earlier about the fact that although people will usually vigorously deny it, everybody's creative.
mm,
That is an innate capacity that we have as human beings, and which whoever that higher source is, whatever it is, that essence that we are, that is creative in and of itself. And all you have to do is look outside to see that. And all you have to do is see what happens when you get up in the morning. What clothes do you put on? What do you have for breakfast? What do you go to first? What captures your attention? There's an energy to that.
mm.
And the more we know that it's not a formula, but there's an energy to it and there's a feeling to it. So if I am grinding away at an answer, trying to find an answer, and I can't get it, the best thing for me to do is say, okay, I'm done. I give up. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to make space for a new idea to come through. And it always does. It may not be, on my close enough for my deadline, but it might too. You just never know. But the process is always there. It's just part of who we are.
As you were talking, I was gonna ask get a people like, so Nina, so how many minutes should I give up for? And
Right.
and at what time of day? Right? Like
Yeah.
there's that. And as you were talking, it occurred to me, um, I think we have weird premises and KPIs, like key performance indicators, like how productive are my people, how results orientated in terms of
Yeah.
business, right? And now I just wonder if we flip those KPIs to how how creative are my people? How loving is this environment to work in? Or
How much fun are they having?
how much fun are they having? And how not serious are they? Like how are they too serious, as like a maybe a reverse indicator? Like are they too serious? Like how unserious are they? And
Yeah.
I just see the plethora. Good job, Nikon. Vocabulary of the plethora of benefits that come from being fully engaged with what you're doing, having fun, and really knowing you have this creativity to rely on. And even in terms of, I guess, if you switch over to relationships, right? And people might be listening, like, okay, that's all good and well for business, but what about like my personal relationships? How can I be creative with that? Or like, how can I like I think things that are more closer to our heart, maybe it's easier to get insecure about them, right? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's really easy to get insecure about anything when
True
that's an
that.
issue for
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
kind of one of those across the board indicators
That
that,
that's yeah, that's really helpful too. Instead of seeing it as like, well, this is how creativity and love applies to business and relationships, like insecurity is across the board kind of thing. Love and creativity is across the board kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, it's like going to the grocery store. Which are you going to choose today? What are you going to put in your shopping cart? Are you going to put in insecurity, doubt, self-flagellation, or are you going to put in fun and curiosity and awe?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I have to say this because it's been on my mind lately, is that I read recently that one of the qualities of enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
which that maybe that subject isn't on the table today, but one of the qualities of enlightenment is awe.
Mm.
And what if we lived more with that instead of, the jaded, cynical, oh, yeah, well, that won't work? What if we just put that aside for a while? And if we are willing to follow, let's call it love, let's call it curiosity, let's call it awe, there is a wider engagement with life. There's a sense of expansion, there's a sense of connection. And that is really, that's what fuels, that's the high test. That's the high test fuel.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder too, I wonder how many people might not even know that's an option, right? Until they listen to this, or they some points
Right.
out like, hey, did you know like the good stuff is also available and it's also at the same price, like.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And it doesn't take that long to start shifting your awareness to what else is possible, if that's what you want. I think you have to get to a point where you get tired of operating from insecurity. You
Mm.
get tired of operating from fear. You get tired of operating from self judgment. And you want something more. And once, I think that's the turning point. Once you say, I'm done with this, is that almost that declaration is what opens the door to possibilities.
If I may, like, what was that like for you to
When
if
I
yeah,
got to that point,
when you got to that point?
boy, it really opened up my world. I
Mm.
mean, I've seen that in a couple different contexts, but just as in terms of a broad perspective, I felt really small and
Mm.
I felt very limited. And that didn't make sense to me because you look at what's going on in the world and you look at what people have accomplished and you realize, well, why am I not doing that kind of thing? Why don't I have that kind of enthusiasm? Why don't I have that kind of drive?
Mm.
And I just saw it for myself that I was living according to other people's expectations. I
Mhm.
was comparing myself. I was more worried about what other people thought of me and how I looked and whether I fit in than I did being my own, being willing to do what made me happy and what I loved and what gave me a sense of joy and happiness. And
Mm.
that's the way we're conditioned. We're conditioned to fall in line, do what we're expected of us. Be good citizens, be good workers. But the real juice, the real
Mm.
joy is in following what we love and being able to find it in whatever we're doing. That's my 2 cents.
Just 2 cents, right?
Well,
Um, I think for me, when I guess for me to relate to what you said, it's true. Like I definitely in my experience with that, it definitely I definitely got there through frustration and pain. And like it wasn't like I picked up a book, I'm like, oh, like operate on love and creativity. Good stuff. Like I'm gonna do that now. Like I feel it's almost like part of the process of going through knowing what the other stuff is like so you can know what the good stuff is like. And it's true, like I think we all get to a point of just giving up where it's like, you know what, I'm done. Like I am so done with frustration and feeling not enough and not good enough because I'm judging myself. And I think when we get to that point where we kind of give it up, and it's like you turn around and then like life taps you on the shoulder. It's like, great, now that you've given it up, here's all this good stuff we've been waiting to
right.
give
It's
to
about
you for
time.
forever, forever. And I guess and what came to me just now is I think there's a premise too of I think with creativity and love, it's like it's almost like those are things we need to work on ourselves on to get those things. Like it's earned. Like you earn really, high quality love, or you earn high quality creativity after you've been trained or you go through stuff. And what I'm seeing now is it occurs to me that none of us had to earn it. We just were sick and tired of what of the way we were being, and then we like, you literally, it's like, look this way, and it's like, oh, it's been there all along. What, I guess, what occurs to you? I don't know where I was going with that either, but your turn, Nina.
It doesn't matter where we're going.
Yeah.
We'll all end up in the same place. Well, as you were talking,
Mm,
what was occurring to me was we operate
mm,
on belief systems
mm,
that for them to a large degree have been handed down to us,
mm,
so that what our operating system is running on is in large part dependent on what we've been taught.
mm,
And most of us, we were just talking about this, most of us are taught to stay in line,
mm,
do go according to a certain thing. And yet, it's based on an industrial model from the 18th and 19th century. It's not the way we live now. Life is
mm,
not linear. And yet, many businesses still operate on that model.
mm,
Linear progression of results, linear progression of expectations, linear projections of life, school, education, college, graduate school, maybe, business
mm,
school, this job, that job, this job, house, family, kids. All these things are future expectations, but they don't include that really life giving, life affirming quality of who are you? What do you love? What's attracting you? What are you doing here? Let's have some fun. Let's have some creativity. Let's have some joy. Let's have some connection, some collaboration, some fun.
mm. It yeah. I was speaking to a young gentleman today, and it was really cool. And he was sharing how he thought his weakness was that he was too motivated, or too much, like he didn't know how to fit into this organization he's working for. He didn't yet know the rules, and like how to be and how to fit in. And I shared, like, it occurred to me, and I said to him, I wonder if you know that that's your gift and not your weakness.
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, tell me more. And I was like, well, it occurs to me that if someone doesn't know how far they can go yet because they don't see the walls, they're free to explore and be creative. And they'll probably bring a whole lot more value to their company and to their work and to their team than someone who's already established where the limits are. I
Yeah.
mean, we just sat with that, and we just sat with, yeah, what if he really let himself just be, like, free to enjoy this creativity and kind of excitement and love that was clearly flowing through him, but he was like nervous. He's like, is this okay, like.
Yeah, isn't that funny that the thing that makes us alive, the next question is this okay? Am I
Yeah,
allowed
is
to
this
do
okay,
this?
like, is this, like,
And
what,
yet
yeah,
everybody loves to see that.
yeah,
Right? Everybody loves to see somebody who's happy and they're doing what they love and they're a little bit on the edge of things, but they're having a ball. But the vast majority of people are, you know, leading lives of quiet desperation.
I'd love for you to speak more to that. Like, what is it about being really happy and being really in love that's kind of, is this okay, is this scary, like what, or being really creative, like what is it about that kind of induces insecure thinking, or induces, like, you know apprehension? What do you think that's about?
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier is, do I have permission? Can I give myself permission to
Mm,
explore, to expand, to thumb my nose at the rules,
yeah.
that there's so much indoctrination that we get from schools, religion,
Mm,
politics, everything that says stay in the line, stay in your row. And yet, gosh, who wants to really live that way? We there's carrot that I think that's dangled
Mm.
in front of most of us. If we live this way, we'll get this. But what about now? What about our lives right now? And sometimes I think we don't know how precious our lives are
Mm.
because we get so busy. I have to do this, and this is on my schedule, and I have to. But where's the I want to? Where's the I get to? And when we
Yeah.
have that, it's a
Mm.
different world.
Shout out to 𝗟cie𝗰𝗂𝘁 again. One of the things she taught me and I've learned from her has been not to feel guilty about what I want. And I saw how many lines and condition I had around really letting myself want what I want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's funny that you say that for a lot of reasons, but when I was growing up, I had three older brothers. They were so only girl, three older brothers. They were all in the military,
Mm.
and that to me was like, oh, you got to be kidding me,
Yeah.
And one of my brothers went to Catholic high school.
Mm.
I was so not that, I was the hippie of the family, and I
Mm.
was the black sheep. And I had two different forces operating in my life. One, I wanted to fit into my family, and
Mm.
one of them was I couldn't. There was
Yeah.
no
Like
way
I'm
I
out of
could.
here.
you
Yeah.
know? And I think we all face that dilemma of, do I want to fit in or do I want to be me? I mean, that's kind of a sappy way of saying it, but it really does come down to that.
Mm.
Am I willing to feel good and have a life that I want to lead? Or do I want to behave, conform, and hopefully get to the rewards that are promised at the end of
Mm.
that road?
Mm. So tying it back into creativity, to love and creativity, I wonder, it actually occurred to me that um, if you're not used to running on the fuel of love and letting yourself being really creative, like that natural way of being creative, I can see how scary it would look because it's kind of a direct route to the unknown. Because it really does, like in my experience, when you're operating on love and you're really letting yourself be creative, it really does take you to places beyond imagination. And on paper, I can see how useful that is for running a business or being an entrepreneur or even in relationships, right? Like we're like supposed to be like this, but like no, like well, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to experience with you. Um, well, what comes to your mind when you think about where love and creativity can take you when you let it?
Oh, I think it can take you to a very ecstatic place. And I also think it can take you to a place of self-fulfillment and peace. I don't mean necessarily a Zen state, but you know how good you feel when you've tried something that you haven't tried before and you've seen something new. And it's that spark, that there's nothing like it. And I love
Mm.
the fact that when you were talking to that person, that young man,
Mm.
that you were asking those kinds of questions. I wonder, what if? And
Mhm.
those kinds of things open up our worlds. And whether it's in a business context or a creative
Mhm.
context, I mean, let me clarify that, in more of an artistic
Mm.
context
Mm.
or in a relationship,
Mm.
it doesn't really matter because who wants to live a stale life?
Yeah, that looks good on the outside, right? And
To some people, but not to the person on the inside.
mm.
There's just such a there's just such a well, let me use this as an example. The program that I've been running, Love in Action, is kind of a awkward name. It's more like Love Rediscovered. And what we've been doing is looking at different subjects every week. So we talked about energy one week. We spent 2 weeks on quantum physics, which was wild. And we looked at nature and we looked at inspiration and we looked at a number of different things. And you realize when you stop and you're willing to look around you, that almost everything is a portal to new possibilities.
Mm.
Who doesn't? There are very few people who would really prefer safety and smallness to experiences that open you and make you feel bigger and make you feel more connected and make you feel like you have more possibilities to your life.
I'm loving this conversation because the premises that in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I see that as a premise now is I don't know where it comes from. Maybe you can help me. It's almost like this idea that there's so like to get to where you're talking about so much work. You have to work so much on yourself. You have to clear out all this negative stuff so then you can finally get there. You have to work on yourself so much and build yourself up to finally get to peace, to finally get to fulfillment, to finally get to the good stuff. And what I'm hearing from you is it's more of a willingness to go there yourself. Maybe you can correct me or expand on that.
I don't think it requires work. I
Mm,
think that a key element is where we put our attention.
mm,
So if I'm putting my attention on trying to keep myself safe, trying to keep myself well liked,
mm,
trying to control the future,
mhm,
that that has its obvious consequences. But if I'm open to something else, if I'm willing to take my attention off things that feel like an obligation,
mm,
and I'm willing to focus my attention on something else. We don't have control over what thoughts come into our head.
mm,
We don't have control over the things that seem like pressing obligations or demands, whether it's business or personal life.
mm,
But we do have control over where we put our attention. So
mm,
if we stop putting our attention on what's not allowed and what we can't do and start looking at things that engage us and be willing to open them up, not just say, oh, that's interesting, but what's interesting about that? What else? That question that I so love about the way that you coach people
mm,
is that wondering, that curiosity, that like, let's look at that. What's there? Is it fun? Does it feel good? Does it make you feel more expansive? I think that's the direction to go in. It seems pretty obvious. But most of the time, we're just not looking in that direction.
mm. I see how I love what you said, obvious, because to me, a cool thought came to my head. Like on the surface, love and creativity look really obvious, and in reality, it is really obvious. And we overcomplicate the shit out of it, I
Yeah.
think, and that keeps us from, I guess, their innate gifts or the word. Like we use words to describe love and creativity, but what they really are is parts of our innate being, right? That were built into the system. I think I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but there's a joke on the internet. There's a joke on the internet. I'm sorry, I'm going to hell. There's a joke on the internet that says like, you ever think God gets high? Like, check out this platypus. It's like, it has like, it's like a duck, an amphibian, a mammal, and it lays eggs. Like, if that's not nature's creativity, I don't know what is.
Yeah. I think God is always high.
Best podcast ever.
High on life. High
Good
on seeing
twist.
those.
Good save. Good twist.
Well, how could it not be? If
Mm,
you were like, this is a perfect example. Like, why can't we be God? Why can't we experience all of life
mm,
and be good with it
mm,
and be willing to go into the places that look ugly or scary? It's all part of that infinite expression of this awareness, this grand possibility that exists, infinite possibilities. We have that. I think, to me, that's where the saying that we're made in the image of God, that's what makes sense to me, is that we have infinite possibilities. We can, I mean, there's tons of examples, right, of people who have gone beyond what they thought they could do. And but they followed something. They
Mm.
followed the thread, and their worlds change and their worlds get bigger.
I think in The Last Dance and from Netflix, I think it was Magic Johnson or something who said something to Michael Jordan, like teased him about it, and like said, "Oh, you're not good enough." That like Michael Jordan proceeded to destroy Magic Johnson on the basketball court and said, like, "From now on, you call me Black Jesus." You know? And the way that relates to this conversation is, to me, you can't help but get spiritual if you look long enough and you explore long enough the idea or the concept of love and creativity. Because if you go back to the source, you can't help but get creative. A platypus is both love and creativity in action, right? Um,
Yeah.
there's something else I wanted to say too about that. Oh, I know what I said. I think it was by our mutual mentor Michael Neal, where he said, like, I wonder what this person would, like, how this a person would approach this situation if he knew he or she was God. And I think when I first heard that, it was more of, well, obviously I would change circumstances so I'd feel better. But now in this conversation, I'm seeing that I probably wouldn't be bothered by it so much if I was God. Like, I wouldn't be bothered by the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think about how we take things personally. When
Yeah.
something looks bad to us, we have some opinion about it.
Yeah. So I had a meme about that. It's like, so I had an insecure thought float through my mind and I took that personally.
Well, that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we get crazy ideas. And the ones that are, it's like we're operating from that reptilian part of our brain, right? Like
Mm,
where we get something going and we think, oh God, I can't do that. That's threatening. That's life threatening. And
mm,
yet, most of the time, that's just an old habit based on self preservation. But
right.
what if we were more interested in self expansion than self preservation? Now that would change things.
Mm. I think that's a great place to kind of leave it off. You know what I mean? Like in expansion. Like if I think if anything, if creativity and love are pointing to anything, it would be expansion. Um, and before we go, do you have any final thoughts on our conversation?
Do what you love.
Mm. I would add on to that. Do what you love and not take life so personally.
I thought you were going to say not take no for an answer.
No, that's the old Nikon that wants to get shit done. Now I'm well, just if you don't take it personally, you'll get back into, like, you'll be able to touch that space that we're talking about today,
Yeah.
love and
Because
creativity.
ultimately, it's not about us. It's about the thing. It's one of those funny paradoxes, right? It's not ultimately about us. It's about the process that we're engaging in that changes who we are and gives us more of a feeling of aliveness and gratitude.
Mm. And that's where all the good stuff is.
Yes.
Secret heard on this podcast.
You
uh,
heard it here.
you heard it here. Um, before I ask you to plug you, I'm gonna plug you. To me, so I met Nina on Super Coach Academy, and to her credit, I think before I met you in person, because I met you in like Super Coach Cafe and things like that, you were like always one of the cool kids I've always wanted to hang out with. I'm like, I want to hang out with Nina. And then And then somebody really recently said that you and me were the cool kids. So I was like, yes, like my life is a success. I am part of like that club. But I remember the first time I saw you, you had your hair and you had sunglasses, and I was like, oh my God, like, is that Nina? Is that Nina Lockwood?
The famous Nina Lockwood.
Yeah, yeah. And I rocked up to you and I was like, are you Nina? And without missing a beat, you were like, yes, that is like I don't know, I'm sure you didn't say it that way, but the way to me it was like, it is I. And you were so sweet and so kind, and I just like, you just know, like I just knew like this lady's a badass. And I'd love for you to tell us all about the things you're doing and where we can hang out with you, and where we can find you.
Okay. Well, I'm running another program of Love in Action starting the beginning of February, which has been so cool and so fun and so renewing for all of us. It's really been an unexpected gift. I'm on ninalockwood.com. That's my website. I write for Medium. Um, Gosh, what else can I tell you?
What are you really good at helping people with? Like,
Oh, I'm really good at helping me and helping other
helping me,
people
yeah.
because it always goes that way. See what's possible for themselves
Mm.
and see what's already available for them without having to work on themselves or improve themselves or make better connections.
Where do I sign up? At ninalockwood.com.
Right.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this show. I have thoroughly enjoyed exploring with you and talking to you, and also just really grateful to have you as call you a friend and colleague and fellow spiritual astronaut. And yeah, I know this conversation is going to help so many people who are even slightly interested in what love and creativity can bring into their lives. Yeah,
Let's have more of it.
more of it. All right, it's been wonderful. See you later. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.